Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have a guest today, Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine, and Nick Poliveda, founder of the networks. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Sasha.
Hello, everyone.
Great to have you. Ivan, you have a video. Let's start with that, so we'll see
Yeah.
what is it all about. Yes, very, very sobering. And speaking about of demolishing of Odessa, this is really make my heart bleeding because I lived just a few blocks away from this cathedral, and it's just so painful. We have a lot of things to cover today. First of all, on the front lines, Ukraine continued to search for the opening to mount its decisive attack. And what I've heard now is that this is not 9, but already 17 brigades are ready to attack Russian positions, and much more brigades are still in preparation stages. So I think that this will be done once the opening will be created. And it seems to me that a big problem for Ukrainians to mount successful attack is a lack of two things. Number one is obviously ATACMS missiles, which could use HIMARS for the launch, and they could fire up to, I believe, 300 kilometers. So the Russians, as they moved first their supply lines from 30 kilometers to 120 kilometers when HIMARS appeared. So now they would have to move supply lines to up to 300 plus kilometers. They're no longer supply lines. It's very difficult to supply. Like it will take 5 hours to bring dinner or fuel what needed, or ammunition or something. It's impossible. So ATACMS would really change a lot in the war. And F-16s, we know that for successful attack, Ukraine needs superiority in the air. So now let's speak about the problem why Ukraine is not getting today ATACMS and F-16s is President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, right? Ivan, what do you think about the situation? Because Ukraine used to praise him for, in the first months of war, where he organized all the NATO support and he's done so many positive things. And all of a sudden now he stopped. I have my own theory is that because of the election of next year, Biden wants to have Ukraine really progress and have victories, not now, but next year. Say summer, maybe even September, October next year, right before election. And here is a great Joe Biden. He engineered Ukrainian victory. He's our old new president. Viva Joe Biden, okay? Ivan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I actually had the same things about it because right now Joe Biden is not interested in victory of Ukraine. till next year, I'm sure all Americans will forget about it and the role of United States and Joe Biden in this progress, and they will be disturbed by some other things. So it will not get him so much election points like it can bring him next year. So in this theory, I completely agree with you. Another point is that in the question of helping Ukraine, there are a lot of factors which inflict it. For instance, I've heard about some agreements of United States and Israeli and Russia, actually, in order not to supply F-16s to Ukraine, because otherwise Russia will supply their fighter jets to Iran. And this is a position of Israel, because due to this position, they even blocked supply of upgraded MiG fighter jets from Poland to Ukraine. Poland was ready to deliver even more MiG fighter jets upgraded, but because they were upgraded using the Israel technologies and equipment, they required permission to supply them to Ukraine, and Israel didn't give that permission, because also it was an issue of supplying Russia their Su fighter jets to Iran if Poland or United States will or Israel will give their permission. So it's unfortunately it's a big game, and in this game, Ukraine is one of the parties, and Joe Biden and other world leaders have to consider the interests of other parties. From the other side, unfortunately, Joe Biden definitely is a great friend of Ukraine, and he and United States are helping us a lot. But Joe Biden is not Boris Johnson, and he is not Ronald Reagan, who decided to destroy the empire of evil, Soviet Union. And probably Joe Biden doesn't have enough power and enough strong back to be more aggressive in this. Maybe his advisors, members of his team, still believe that Russia has the second most powerful army in the world, though we know that their army is second most powerful army in Russia, not even in Ukraine. Or there are some other issues which influence his decisions, and they are not so straightforward towards the quick victory of Ukraine. Unfortunately for us.
But first of all, some sites say that Su-35, the Russian fighters planes, they already been delivered to Iran. So if that's the case, then nothing should stop Biden to send F-16s.
That's why we see progress in F-16 question, because F-16s were promised that the training of Ukrainian pilots will start as soon as possible. It was promised in May.
Yes.
And then Ukrainian pilots, instead of defending the Ukrainian sky, they were just sitting and waiting when United States and Joe Biden will allow other countries to train Ukrainian pilots. And this permission was given only in July, and it was stated that the training will be started in August.
Probably 11 countries are going to train.
Yeah, so probably it was there was some process behind during these 2 months. Why that training didn't start immediately? And as soon as we see that Iran received those Su-35 fighter jets from Russia, then that progress started to happen, and then it's not just our theory that there are some agreements behind the United States, Israel, Russia, and Iran. It's a fact of such agreements which were between them.
Ivan, but I understand that F-16s is a very complicated question. It's a political question. It's a training. It's a delivery of the flight. It's so many things involved. What about ATACMS that you can use HIMARS really to strike with the ATACMS? What is there? Nick, may I ask you, maybe we're talking now more and more about internal U.S. politics, which affect Joe Biden's decisions. What do you think?
Well, realize, Sasha, that number one is that he did send cluster bombs over. So those are highly controversial because apparently they have a long-term effect that the bombs don't explode and then people step into them later. The other reason I think he sent them over is Russia's using cluster bombs already. Okay. So they're using them. Remember, we do have a policy that they don't speak about too much in Washington, D.C., but it's called a measured response. And so what happens is this is part of, I think, the measured response that they're doing in Washington, D.C. right now. The other thing is that we have issues that are going on right now in the United States, the media. Sasha, other than your show, the media is very spotty in terms of reporting on Ukraine. In other words, every now and then, if something happens, like they blow up a bridge, it'll hit the media. Then there'll be days, if not weeks, before we never even discuss Ukraine. It's like it doesn't exist. Remember, if it's not in front of you and you can't absorb it, it's almost like it doesn't exist. So the media here is spotty when it comes to that. And we know overseas, a lot of cases were shut off altogether. So we can't even find out what's going on overseas. Problem number two you have is leadership in Washington. We actually have a leadership vacuum, and this will surprise Ivan. We have a leadership vacuum in Washington. People are afraid of their own shadows to take positions because of repercussions. So Joe Biden, I don't know if he's afraid or he's just an old man. I mean, you know, he's going to be in his 80s if he gets reelected again. And frankly, the energy and the facilities aren't there if they ever were with Joe Biden.
Nick, he's afraid, but he doesn't remember what.
He doesn't remember anything. He probably didn't remember what happened in World War II or anything, you know, and there's a real problem with that. So we have a leadership vacuum in Washington that is they're stumbling over themselves because, in my humble opinion, air superiority should be the number one priority. In other words, send those F-16, send F-35, and send them en masse. In other words, always oversupply. Promise 100, deliver 250. In the United States, we won World War II because we could produce not the best. The Sherman tanks were certainly not as good as the Panthers or the Tigers, but we could produce a lot of them. And so that could help. And then, of course, you have NATO. No action, talk only. You know, it's almost like, well, we're not going to take this very seriously. And NATO needs to also get behind the effort of what I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Ivan, is air superiority. If you don't have air superiority, what are we doing here? You know, in other words, you might as well say, we'll just hold our position until we get the bloody F-16s.
In fairness, NATO doesn't have its own army. Number two, it's
NATO doesn't have anything.
Okay, number two, exactly. So number two, when you are talking about NATO and US, I wouldn't talk separately about this too, because without US, there is no Article 5, there is no NATO at all. I mean, there are talks that NATO should have European only forces or so on, but you know that this is who is going to join these forces? Romania and Chernogoria. What are we talking?
Well, that's been the joke on this show. NATO stands for no action, talk only. Okay, because they can't do anything, or they won't do anything. And so the thing is, I think what happens is that you need to show a superior hand. You need to do that by, look, I would send them as many F-16s as you got pilots who are willing to bloody fly them.
But even if it will take some time, but ATACMS, the HIMARS are already there. So ATACMS are just missiles with a longer range. The usual missiles they're using now, it's about they're hitting 70 to 80 kilometers. Why is it so important? Because when HIMARS, you see the supplying lines of Russians, which is the most important thing for successful any war operations, they were before like 30 kilometers away from front lines. When HIMARS appeared and started to shoot, they moved the supply lines to 120 kilometers, which are already great inconvenience when you need to bring dinner for the soldiers on supply lines. You have to drive 120 kilometers, and it's not a highway driving. It's taking 3-4 hours. So now with ATACMS hitting 300 kilometers, they would have to move supply lines to 400 kilometers away from the front lines. No front line can function when supply is 400 kilometers away. So what stops Biden to supply this bloody ATACMS? Okay, for F-16s is more complicated, but ATACMS is a simple matter. Why is it not being implemented by now?
Yeah, well, I mean, they should. Okay, and the thing is, like I said, we have a lot of toys over here that we could send them. There's also the A-10 Warthogs that they could send over there. And why is the reluctance of the West not to supply Ukraine, who is eager to defend their own country, is beyond the pale. But I think it also boils down to the biggest problem we have in the United States leadership in Washington, D.C. In other words, have you seen any bold leaders come out of either party here, Sasha? People that take stands. And you're right, Ronald Reagan, as much as you may like or hate him, he at least took a stand on something. They stand on something. So what we need to do is we need to find some leadership in Washington who said, look, we are going to supply air superiority to the Ukraine, period. As you say, Sasha, period, full stop. It's kind of a Canadian thing.
It's a Canadian way.
You know, because my belief is the air superiority makes all the difference. In other words, you're going to see the difference. If you have ground troops and they're getting constantly bombarded by the air, that's not a good thing. Like I said, I wouldn't even move until those F-16s arrive. I would just say, okay, we'll wait till they come, and then once they come, then you take action. But that's me. You know, I'm gonna.
Just one remark to complete what Neil just said, that a few days ago I heard General Wesley Clark, who said that we are asking Ukrainians to do what that we would never even consider do ourselves. Right. It means to attack without air superiority. There is not even air parity. There is just Russians completely control the air. And I found it's quite incredible. Yes, Ivan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the same, that even the NATO principle is of all NATO and the US military operations that any attack could be only possible, and any advancing of the troops could be possible only with air superiority, like Desert Storm operation in Iraq, or the 1995 mission in former Yugoslavia, that first of all the air superiority had to be advanced on the battlefield, and then ground troops can advance, or sometimes you can achieve results even without involving the ground troops. And now Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian troops are advancing. Actually, we already liberated 50% of the territory that Russia occupied starting the last year, and Ukrainian troops are advancing in the conditions when we have no air superiority, when we have delays in supplying the heavy equipment and tanks, those tanks which were promised us in winter, we actually didn't received all of the equipment of the vehicles of the tanks which were promised. We are still receiving them, like Leopard 1 from the Germany, like Leopard 2 from other countries. We
Canada
didn't-
sent all its Leopard.
all four Leopard.
And
tanks.
Spain sent 6 Leopard 1 just recently.
It's 6.
Yeah, and they're sending
All
the
6
10 Leopard 2 actually, and this is twice as much as Canada. So I hope that Canada will review the amount of Leopards 2 they can send to Ukraine and find at least 7 more Leopards to send
First,
to Ukraine.
Canada has to buy them from United States and then send to Ukraine.
Canada
That's how it
has
works.
a great number of leopards, and I think that Canada should be not so afraid of Russia to keep to keep some huge amount of tanks, or maybe Canada is going to get involved with the United States, so they have they need such amount of tanks.
I
But,
have no idea why
it-
Canada needs this arsenal.
It's I think that
Why
it's
does
better,
Canada
No, you see,
it's
United
better-
States need arsenal because they have threats from both Canada from the north and Mexico from the south. Now, Canada doesn't even have that. It's only
and Russia as well in Alaska, because Alaska was former Russian territory, and maybe tomorrow President Putin will make another announcement, like he already made about Ukraine and about Poland, that Russia gave those territories to Poland, and it was a gift of Russians and to Ukraine. And maybe tomorrow he will say that Russia gave present to United States Alaska, and it's a Russian historical Russian territory, and it should be get back to Russia. I hope that he's crazy enough to make such announcement.
he will announce that Russia will free Alaskan people from American imperialism. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. But no, without any jokes, I think that it's more profitable for Canada, for United States, and for other countries who are supporting Ukraine to destroy Russian tanks in Ukraine, not in Canada, not in United States, like the secretary of the NATO, Stoltenberg, said that Western countries are paying Ukraine and helping Ukraine with the money, and Ukraine is paying for this war with our own blood. And if Western countries will stop paying with the money, they will have to pay with their blood. But unfortunately, the quantity of blood in Ukraine is not indefinite, and the slower and the less amount of help we receive from the Western countries, the more lives of our soldiers and civilians we lose in this war. So we just need more, and we just need the assistance in time, not the.
And the weapons are just as much important, or maybe even more important than money, because you can have as much money as you can, but if Russia will continue its aggression and destroy Russian cities and kill Ukrainian citizens, destroy Ukrainian civilians.
Sasha, Russia is destroying Russian cities too. In this
war.
It's okay. They are doing the same. It's their great practice, KGB practice, to destroy their own cities or killing their own civilians in order to keep the required level of support of this war in the Russian society.
And there is
They
many more people in Russian army, including generals. They're very, very unhappy with the Putin regime, and there is a lot of uprising and a lot of speeches, including public speeches of Russian generals, Popov and others, who are extremely criticizing Putin's regime. So the morale in Russian army is not really at the greatest level. What have you heard about it, Ivan?
Yeah, I've heard a lot, but this is not going further. Unfortunately, they criticize Putin and the military command of Russian, and then the next day they're being dismissed from their positions, or they're being arrested. They're not being killed. Just like it was during the reign of Stalin, because he just killed all generals and all who were not accepting his rule and criticizing him. Those they're just being fired or arrested, and this is not going elsewhere. We've seen that rebel of Prigozhin. Just a very funny case, which was just some kind of circus from one side, and I don't know. I think that in their majority, Russian soldiers, Russian generals, Russian commanders, they're just like slaves. They see that they are being slaughtered in Ukraine, in Ukrainian meat grinder, but they have even no idea just to turn back and to throw Putin off his throne. They imagine Putin like a Tsar. He's Tsar, Russian Tsar for them. And they just go and try to implement his orders, though these orders are so silly sometimes. I've actually had the theory that Hitler was not killed. Was not actually assassinated during the Second World War by.
He killed himself.
He killed himself in the end, but he could be assassinated by United States or Great Britain or some. But it was not a good deal for the Allies, because Hitler gave such silly orders. That led to the losses of German army, and in case Hitler was assassinated, then someone more smart could get in power, and in this case, the war actually could continue for several more years. And I think that
too little, too late. It was just the last few days of war. But I must, speaking about Hitler, I think that he rushed his attack against Russia. If he would delay the attack, Stalin would assassinate even many more generals and commanders of Russia. So it would be even easier for Hitler to overrun Russia at that time. Anyway, I would like to thank you very, very much for today's program. We discussed a lot of things, and I hope we will have even more good news on Friday, same day, same time, same place. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Bye-bye.
Thank you.